Thank you. As you've seen the notice, this meeting is going to be recorded as per usual, but welcome everyone to our November member meeting, our second to last of the year. Super excited to have all of you here tonight and really just excited for what's on our agenda for this evening. But before we get to the agenda, what you will see on the slide on the screen right now are some of our committee updates, which we'll go through. But if you want to take a screenshot of it or start to read through those things as we go through some of like the housekeeping, then that's completely fine and encouraged. But again, thank you everyone for joining us for our November member meeting. A couple of housekeeping items. As I mentioned, the call is being recorded, and that's so that way we can play it back for others who may not be able to make it here with us, but would like to also stay looped into our work. Also want to acknowledge that we do have closed captioning or transcript. So if that is something that you need to use or would prefer to use or like to use, go ahead and access that at the bottom of your screen as you see fit or necessary. A little bit about what our agenda will look like tonight. So we're going to start off as usual with a grounding. So in a moment, I'm going to pass it to Oka from our healing committee. And then we will go through some updates from the organization, some committee updates. And for our main segments this evening, we have a couple of exciting discussions and conversations that we'll be going through. The first one is really talking a little bit about advocacy and what that looks like right now during this election season. So as you all know, Initiate Justice, we advocate for policy change to end incarceration. But there are some things that we do specifically in terms of advocacy, and there are some things that we don't do when it comes to elections. I know there's been a lot of questions and requests for support on different projects and things. So we want to kind of share a little bit of information about what we do as a 501c3 and what we do not do when it comes to the election season of the year. And then we'll have a Q&A. We'll have a little bit of discussion if folks have any questions or any comments. And then we have an exciting call to action, which you may all be familiar with, but elections are coming up November 8th. So we'll be talking a little bit about some resources just to make sure that everyone's informed that you do have the right to vote. We restored voting rights a couple of years ago to folks who are on parole. So we want to make sure that you have access to all of the resources that you need if you're voting for the first time, or if someone in your community that you know, loved one, family, friend, may be voting for the first time in this upcoming election. So we're going to share some resources there. And then we'll close out with our member of the month and some closing remarks. So thank you everyone for joining. If you are here joining us for the very first time, let us know in the chat. Right now, I see a lot of familiar faces, and I'm so excited to see all of you. But if you're here for the very first time, let us know, and also let us know what brought you to our member meeting tonight. So without further ado, and before we jump into all of the good stuff for tonight's November member meeting, I first want to pass it over to Oka to get us grounded and take a moment to hold some space for us.
Thank you, Antoinette. I'm going to share my sound. So you'll hear some background sounds. And you'll hear that. Be a thumbs up. Okay, I see it. Ourselves. Invite you to close your eyes or gaze down towards your nose. Bring of the energy back to yourself. And gently check in with yourself. How are you? We're going to do some box breathing. So we're going to breathe in for 4, hold for 4, and exhale out for 8, slowing down the nervous system on every exhale. And then holding at the top. I invite you to take a deep breath in for 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold at the top for 2, 3, 4, and then exhale out for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Good. Emptying out the lungs. Just hold it at the top for 2, 1. Deep, loving breath in for 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathing into this belly, the lower belly, holding it there for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold at the top for 2, 1. Deep breath in for 1, 2, 3, 4. Holding the lower belly full of this air for 7, 6, 5. Let it go. 4, 3, 2, 1. Empty lungs, hold it at the top for 1, 2, 3, 4. Deep breath in for 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold at the top for 4. As you exhale for 8, just feel the water kind of washing away anything from today. Maybe you visually see this water washing away from the top of your body, down your body, bringing awareness and continuing the breath in, hold, exhale out. And I invite you to just notice the air coming in your nose. And you feel the warm air leaving your nose. Softening the jaw, the shoulders. Feeling the surface below you. If you like, you can bring your hands up to just create a bit of movement, kind of like a star, where your hands are kind of stretching in opposite direction. And then bringing your hands down, kind of like waves, maybe wiggling your fingers. And then include the breath in. Inhale, rise. Exhale, let anything that's not serving you wash away. Breath in, opening, expanding in this world. Exhale, washing anything that doesn't serve us, letting it go. Maybe a couple more if it feels good. Maybe you do a neck roll. Maybe your chin comes to your chest, right ear, right shoulder, and you just take it around, breathing through any area that needs a bit more breath. And whenever you're ready, the other side, taking your neck around this beautiful body temple that you are in this lifetime. Good. Maybe you want to incorporate some seated cat-cows, rounding the spine and then arching the spine. The spine is like this, it sometimes is straight as we're sitting, riding in a car, standing. And as you come back, whenever you're ready, begin to tap into the sounds, the sight, the taste, the touch. We thrive in community. Thank you. Peace.
Thank you very much, Oka. Really appreciate you taking the time to ground us, give us a moment to like just reset, be still, and exist. We really appreciate you. So I see a few more people joined us. So thank you everyone who's here tonight for our November member meeting. Super excited again, like I mentioned, for our agenda this evening. Do want to provide a few updates. So typically what we do first is we have a new member recognition. This month, we don't have any new official members to announce or to introduce, but what I do want to do is just share a little bit about like what that means or what a member is. So here at Initiate Justice, first and foremost, everyone here is a member. Anyone who supports our work, attends our committee meetings, our events, our member meetings, we definitely recognize as a community member. We do have official members who are recognized as folks who have attended 3 of our past 4 member meetings and also support one of our active committees, which you'll hear a little bit about later. But also those who graduated from our Institute of Impacted Leaders are really just by default members because they are our outside organizers. And the Institute of Impacted Leaders is our 12-week training and advocacy program through which participants, specifically for those of us who are directly impacted by incarceration, we learn really how to show up as advocates. We learn all about the California state legislative process. We learn the power and some skills for storytelling and what that means. We learn also about the framework for abolition and how that's connected to and how our policy change has to be rooted in abolition, I'll say. And then we also talk about the different ways in particular and learn skills and tools to actually execute those different ways that we can be involved and engaged in the legislative process to uplift our voices, uplift the voices of those who are currently incarcerated, and uplift the voices of our community. And we spend a couple of weeks just talking about how we can directly advocate for ourselves also. So that is our Institute of Impacted Leaders. And so that's also a way to become like an official organizer or an official member with Initiate Justice. But what I do want to do is provide a couple of updates, just some general organizational updates, and then we will jump into our committee updates and you'll get to hear like what our committees are working on and how you can show up to support our committees. So for those who may not know who I am, my name is Antoinette Radcliffe. I am the newly appointed Executive Director of Initiate Justice, and I'm super excited to be spending a little bit of time with all of you this evening. But first, I want to start off with some breaks that Initiate Justice has coming up, just so you can be patient with our team, be patient with responses. So a couple of holiday breaks and other breaks that are coming up that we want you all, our community, to be informed of is one, the Veterans Day holiday. So we will, Initiate Justice will be closed on Friday, November 11th in recognition of the Veterans Day holiday. But then in addition to that, the immediate week following, we have our annual Initiate Justice staff convening, where our entire team gets together and we plan and strategize our 2023 goals and efforts. And so that'll be happening November 14th to the 18th. So our staff will mostly be unavailable during that session as we dedicate that entire time to preparing ourselves and our organization for 2023. So the Veterans Holiday, Friday, November 11th, our annual staff convening, which we will be out of the office mostly and away from email, November 14th to the 18th. But then we also have the Thanksgiving holiday break coming up after that. And so November 21st to 25th, our team will be out of the office for the Thanksgiving holiday break. So I do want to put those dates out there and ask that our community be extremely patient with our team during this time with responses to emails, messages, phone calls, as I know many of you have some direct lines of communication to much of our staff. And so definitely want to encourage you all to have some grace and patience with us over the next few weeks. And then I do also want to provide another update. So as many of you know, we recently were hiring for a statewide advocacy manager. And after a very thorough process, we have onboarded a new statewide advocacy manager. So our new statewide advocacy manager is someone who graduated from the Institute of Impacted Leaders, the second ever Institute of Impacted Leaders in 2019, and has since supported multiple organizing efforts, not only throughout the IJ space, but also throughout the movement, the abolition space, abolition movement in general, and has done things like testifying at the state capitol on numerous occasions for various hearings for some bills, has been the guest host on our Abolition is for Everybody, one of our Abolition is for Everybody podcast episodes, has been a guest facilitator for our Institute of Impacted Leaders cohort most recently, and in their own career had graduated from the Solis Policy Institute, spent several years supporting survivors of harm and incarceration in a myriad of ways, including advocacy and direct services. Also is a member of the Justice for Survivors Coalition, advocating for incarcerated survivors, and sits on and chairs several committees of the San Juan Key County Human Trafficking Task Force, and also sits on the board of our sister organization, our 501c4 Initiate Justice Action. And so I do want to introduce, many of you might already be familiar with Adriana Griffith as our new statewide advocacy manager. So Adriana will be spearheading our organizing and advocacy efforts in terms of our outside organizing and outside membership programs, leading our Institute of Impacted Leaders program. And so without further ado, I want to give Adriana the opportunity to introduce herself to all of you. And we're super excited to have you on the Initiate Justice team.
Whoa. Now, thanks so much, Antoinette, for that long rap sheet that I have of advocating and pushing for our community. I super appreciate it. So yeah, cat's out of the bag. I am the new statewide advocacy manager for Initiate Justice. I'm so excited. I'm not going to rehash everything that Antoinette just said, but I will say I'm so just honored and grateful to be a part of IJ in this new way, in this new role, and just continue to push things forward, continue to advocate for our loved ones, fight for things, and just push the whole movement forward. So I'm excited. I was just telling the team I joined at a really good time because getting ready to, as Antoinette said, we're getting ready to close and really just kind of strategize. And so I'm really excited for what 2023 could possibly bring. And I'm just excited. So I'm happy to be here. Y'all know I'm super IJ'd out. So it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I'm super honored to be a part of the team. So thank you, Antoinette, everybody that's already kind of set congratulatory wishes. And I'm seeing lots and lots of love in the chat. So I appreciate everything coming through. But yeah, that's the news. So I'm excited and I'll pass it back to you, Antoinette.
Thank you, Adriana. And for those who are just joining, we just concluded giving some organizational updates, and we're now going to move into some of our committee updates. So here at Initiate Justice, we have 5 active working committees that really allow us and support us in pursuing our efforts for abolition. And so those committees really are the core of our power. Without the volunteers, the members, and the organizers who support each and every one of these committees, we wouldn't be able to accomplish the amazing things that we do, such as the recent bills that we just passed, and that we will see go into effect in 2023. So we'll share a little bit about how you can learn about those bills, but first, Adriana's going to go ahead and go through some of our committee updates, which you see here on the screen. What meetings are coming up, what committees are working on. We are nearing the end of the year, and like we said, strategizing for 2023. So some of our committees have already concluded for the year in terms of meetings, but we'll make sure you know which ones and how you can continue to stay connected.
Awesome. Thanks, Antoinette. So yeah, as far as our committees go, for those that maybe it's your first time in the space or you're unfamiliar with the committees. And so first I want to just draw your attention to the purple on the screen. It says RSVP initiatejustice.org/calendar. So real quick, that is where you can go to see all of the events, committee meetings, member meetings, everything that Initiate Justice has on schedule. So if there is a committee meeting that you are wanting to be a part of after hearing a little bit more, definitely plug in, RSVP. You will get a Zoom link and things like that. And we'll also provide information on ways that you can contact each committee lead as well. So for Inside Organizing Committee, members of this committee really assist in training new inside organizers through curriculum and phone training. So really instrumental in building that organizing base inside prisons throughout California. And so we have a pretty good solid number of inside organizers, but you can never have too many. So we want to continue to fill that committee with folks that are willing to kind of just continue to train those organizers inside. And again, as I said, it is through a curriculum and phone trainings as needed. And the folks that do lead that committee are going to be Lee and Adam. So we'll make sure that you have their information as well. Their next committee meeting is going to be Thursday, November 3rd at 5:30. So I feel like that's tomorrow. Yeah, that's tomorrow. So definitely, if that is something that you are interested in, you want to learn a little bit more, definitely plug in RSVP and attend that committee meeting tomorrow to find out more information about how you can continue to support that effort. Antoinette, do you have anything to add for Inside Organizing?
You know what? I briefly will add something. So typically you'll hear, you'll feel Lee and Adam's energy in this space, but tonight you'll notice that their absence. And so I do just want to acknowledge that our Inside Organizing team, along with our Greg from our policy team, is actually spent today conducting a workshop inside of one of the prisons. And so if you want to hear about how that civic engagement workshop went from our Inside Organizing team, and if you're missing their energy like some of us are here tonight, make sure that you register with the link that I dropped in the chat for their Inside Organizing committee tomorrow night. Thanks, Adriana.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you. And yeah, we definitely wish them well and a safe drive back home afterwards. So moving on to our Inside Membership Committee. So members of this committee support our Inside members by responding to mail, adding new folks to the member list, mailing list, and also continuing to brainstorm ways to elevate the voices of those that are incarcerated currently. And so again, another really dope committee to be a part of. This committee also is really instrumental in getting the Inside Journal into the hands of the folks that are inside. That includes all of the updates on everything that IJ works on throughout the year. So it's a really, really great committee to be on. Again, we have a huge membership base. So always they need help with adding names, sorting through mail and things of that nature. So again, if that is something else that you really want to plug into, continue to help that effort, definitely reach out, RSVP to that meeting, and reach out and ask how you can get involved in that particular committee. And then does anybody else have anything else to add, either from Inside Membership Committee or Antoinette?
No, not right now. At the end, I do want to talk a little bit, just briefly, or I'm going to pass it to one of our team members to give us a brief update on the Insight Journal, which I just plugged into the chat. You can go to our initiatejustice.org/resources link to view the latest edition of the Insight Journal. We're going to give you a brief update on that, but we can go ahead and continue through the updates. Thank you, Adriana.
Awesome, sounds good. So for Healing Committee, this committee, I love Healing Committee. I love to attend some of the Mindful Monday spaces that they have. But for those that maybe don't know, the Healing Committee is a place for support for the emotional health of our membership base through grounding meditations and resources. You did get a little bit of a taste of healing from our wonderful Oka, who opened for us with a grounding exercise. And so that is all about what Healing Committee is all about, really just grounding, meditating, and just coming into space as one another with community to just kind of decompress, de-stress. And it's just a really great committee to be a part of. So if you are interested in joining that committee or expanding that committee, currently, there are Mindful Mondays, like I said. So there is a space for men, there is a space for folks that are formerly incarcerated, and there is a space for folks that have loved ones inside that are currently incarcerated. So it's a space to go to if you just need support for life, as we all kind of do sometimes. So yeah, if you are interested in Healing Committee, this committee meets on an as-needed basis, so that's why you don't see a date here. So if you are interested in learning more, plugging in, definitely reach out to join Healing at initiatejustice.org so you can plug in. And then we will move forward to the Advocacy Committee. This committee is really the space where folks push all of the policy work that Initiate Justice does. So getting the word out about the bills that we're working on, and just everything that entails. So really, again, strategic and pushing the effort forward, getting the word out and letting folks know what's up so they can either take advantage of new laws that are going into effect, or just continuing to get the word out about pushing new legislation through. So for this committee, there are no more advocacy committee meetings this year. They have wrapped up for the year, but you can definitely plug in at initiatejustice.org/changing laws for any and all questions on our 2022 legislative cycle, excuse me, and you can see all of the updated information on all of the bills that we worked on this year. And in addition to that, Abolition Corner, which is a companion space for the podcast Abolitionist for Everybody, also something that the Advocacy Committee works on. And there will be, although there's no more Abolition Corner meetings this year, there is going to be a special feedback 2023 planning session that will be next week on November 8th at 5:30 p.m. Abolition Corner is a really great space to just continue to talk about abolition and what that could look like, using current examples, models, maybe things that are going on in other countries that are worth talking about. Last Abolition Corner, we talked about the Norway model and whether that is good, bad, and different. And folks just really got to share their thoughts. And we got to have a really great conversation. So if you are interested in plugging into that, learning more, or just being a part of the conversation, definitely plug in. And then last but not least, we have Outside Membership Committee. This is the committee that really helps to increase and expand IJ's reach through the community in different ways, and also empowering the members of Initiate Justice as well. So we do this through tabling events, outreaches, and then again, just brainstorming new ways to increase our outreach and increase our reach in all of the spaces throughout California. So our last committee meeting was last week, October of 2022. So we will not be having any more this year, but you can definitely plug in with me if you are interested in joining that committee, or you have questions about the committee or anything like that. And if you're already a member of that committee and you missed the last meeting or any other meeting, definitely reach out to me, and I can get you the most updated recordings for sure. But yeah, that will wrap up our committee updates. And I know, Antoinette, you had one more thing to add as far as an update on the Inside Journal. So I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Adriana. And I do just want to note that I've dropped several different links in the chat to register for these spaces, get more information, contact folks by email. But I'm also going to drop one final link, initiatejustice.org/committees, to learn a lot more about each of our committees. If you are interested in anyone in particular, or missed an update, or just want to have a central place to go reference and get updates on each, you can go to initiatejustice.org/committees. And then also do not forget that you can go to initiatejustice.org/calendar to access all of our upcoming events and register for any of those in which you might be interested. And so I do want to invite Sarah from our policy team to share a little bit about our Inside Journal timeline, because it's a little bit different. We just sent out our last edition of 2022, and we don't want your loved ones inside to get worried if they don't hear from us in the next 2 to 3 months. So I want to pass it to Sarah real quick, just to kind of break down a little bit of the change that happened to our Inside Journal timeline. And so you know what to expect. If you get, folks reaching out, your loved ones, your friends, your family, your community inside asking you questions, we want to make sure that you are very well informed to let them know what's going on with IJ.
Thanks so much, Antoinette. So over the last year, we made sure that the quarterly journals were going out in a way that would really maximize the most value for policy. So we wanted to make sure that our inside members were getting the most up-to-date policy information as possible. So the policy team worked very hard with our inside membership team to figure out when exactly would that be. And we narrowed that down to 4 different legislative kind of hurdles or deadlines that we send the journal right after. The first one is we send out in late February, and that's because that's right after the deadline for bill introductions. So we wait till every bill has a number and we know which bills passed that hurdle of being introduced. Of course, it takes a while for once we send it in for it to actually get inside. It has to go to the printer and it takes a couple weeks for it to actually be distributed. So even though we say late February, it might actually be early March that our loved ones start receiving the journal. So just wanted to note that super quickly. And then we have late May, because that's right after the House of Origin deadline. If you join advocacy committee, you've probably learned, or you will learn next year, that every bill has to go through both their House of Origin and the other side of the legislature. So either the Senate and then the Assembly, or the Assembly and then the Senate. So the end of May is the deadline for it to get out of its first House. And that's a big legislative kind of bottleneck where we see a lot of bills might get stalled, and we like to keep our members informed right after that happens. And then we have late August, so it gets in about early September, because that's when all of the bills need to get out of the legislature. And then finally, we have the beginning/mid-October, because we want to make sure that as soon as the governor signs the bills, we're working on preparing the journal and making sure that our inside members know exactly what bills passed. And then right after we send out the journal, policy starts working with the inside team to make sure that all of our templates are updated as well. So that's kind of a quick rundown of how the journal looks. I'll repeat those dates one more time. But yeah, it follows those legislative hurdles. So again, it is first sent out at the end of February for the deadline for bill introductions, and then late May for the House of Origin, then late August after it has to pass out of the legislature, and then beginning mid-October after we have the final results for all of the bills. But just before I close up, want to give a huge shout out to our inside membership team and all of the organizers and volunteers that make that journal possible. So policy said this because it was around policy deadlines, but it's our inside membership team that gets it done. So just wanted to give our flowers where flowers are due and thank all of you, our volunteers who make it possible. But with that, I will pass back to Antoinette and Adriana.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And Sarah makes policy sound like English, right? And we all know that when we actually learn, read, experience policy and legislation in the legislature, it is not that simple. So I just want to give a huge shout out to Sarah for making it so concise and so easy to understand as to why we follow those particular dates in terms of our Inside Journal this year and moving forward. So yes, the last 2022 edition of the Inside Journal has gone to the printer and is making its way to your loved ones inside with all of the 2022 bill updates. You can also learn about Initiate Justice's bill campaigns, where they landed, the ones that passed by either going to our website. I dropped that link in the chat and I can drop it one more time, but it's initiatejustice.org/changing-laws. I'll drop that into the chat one more time. And then you can also go to @InitiateJustice on Instagram, where you can catch our latest Instagram Live with Sarah and Michelle, and you will learn about the 2022 bills and the ones that passed. So just want to say, like, thank you everyone who has contributed to, supported, advocated for all of our bills throughout this process, because we could not do this without our base, without each and every one of you here on the outside, as well as those who are on the inside. And so just like real quick, acknowledging again, Inside Organizing Committee is meeting tomorrow night. Inside Membership Committee, they have done their job this year. They've made sure all of our members inside are on our database and get our Inside Journal. They've made sure every edition of the Inside Journal was packed with information, tips, tools for advocacy, and so much more. And they've made sure that all of the mail coming from our over 45,000 inside members is responded to in a timely manner. So shout out to our Inside Membership Committee. It's a very well-deserved break. Our Healing Committee meets on an as-need basis, but keep in mind that our Mindful Monday circles are each month on Mondays, and you can go to initiatejustice.org/healing to access all of those and register for which ones apply to you. And then our outside membership committee meeting has also concluded for the year, but you can email Adriana at initiatejustice.org to get access to those recordings if you've missed any of our outside membership committee meetings this year. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Adriana. We're going to go ahead and move along to our main segment for the evening, which I'm super excited to have for you all today. Actually, Adriana is going to be hosting and presenting some information to you all, and we'll be having a brief discussion. But I just want to remind everyone of why Initiate Justice is here, right? One thing that I like to remind our organizers, who probably have heard me say this far too often, but we here at Initiate Justice are not here to give you anything you don't already have. We're simply here to help guide you, provide tools and resources to help you use a power you already possess, which is your voice, which is your power to influence our legislation here in the state of California. It is the power to dismantle the harms that this system continues to perpetuate against us, which we have the power to do. We just need to band together with the tools and the resources to make it happen. And that's what Initiate Justice serves to help each and every one of you here, our loved ones who are not here, who are on the inside, our formerly incarcerated community, and all of those who are impacted by incarceration to do, with the ultimate goal of abolishing incarceration. And so wanting to remind everyone that the tools that we're providing, the resources that we're providing are for you to use your voice, your experiences, and for you to continue to show up as yourself and advocate for yourself, your loved ones, and those impacted by incarceration. And the discussion that we're going to have here is really around like what advocacy could and what advocacy can look like. And especially right now, during the upcoming elections, we want to make sure that you all are showing up on behalf of yourselves in the best way possible, because you have all seen it, the power that happens in a room when you tell your story, when you raise your voice, when you use your testimony and your power to really shift the narrative, to really make change, even if it is the smallest ripple of change. And sometimes voting seems like a drop in the water, right? Just like a drop of water in the sea, but it is significant when we each show out and show up with our voice. And so Initiate Justice is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is here to provide you tools and resources. But something that we don't do is we don't engage in electoral politics. So you don't really hear us talking about who's on the ballot, what's on the ballot, unless it's Proposition 17, because we had to restore voting rights to people who are on parole. But you won't hear us talking about some of the other things, and we want to make sure that you're informed as to why. And we also want to keep you educated on how you can continue to advocate alongside Initiate Justice and outside Initiate Justice, but in a way that allows us to continue to do this work. So Adriana is going to talk to us a little bit about what is the difference between a 501c3 and a 501c4, because as many of you know, our founder and former executive director, Taina Vargas, has moved on to establish IJ Action, which is a 501c4. But you don't hear us talking a lot about IJ Action in this space, and there is a very valid reason why, especially right now during the election. So I'm going to pass it over to Adriana to really explain to us why that is, and how you all can make sure you're still showing up and advocating for yourself in the best way possible throughout this process and throughout the election.
Awesome. Thanks, Antoinette, so much. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. So as Antoinette mentioned, we are a 501c3 organization. And so, yeah, we do not engage in electoral politics. There are certain things that we don't do because we can't do. So today, we really just wanted to provide this really handy dandy resource and a little bit more clarification as to why you don't see Initiate Justice speaking up on certain things, or just anything like that of that nature. And we really just want to make sure that you, our members and organizers, are really equipped with the knowledge as well of understanding these differences, so you can continue to be effective advocates in your communities. And so one thing that you're going to hear, or that you may have already heard in spaces similar to Initiate Justice, is these words, partisan, nonpartisan, and all that jazz. And like, what does it really mean, right? And so this presentation is all about advocacy and organizing and answering the questions like, what does it mean to be nonpartisan and why is this important? So let's see. Oops, let me see. Here we go. All right, so first we want to really just define partisan, nonpartisan. What do these words mean? And so to start off, nonpartisan, and this isn't on the slide, so I apologize for that. So I'm going to just say it, but definitely if you need me to repeat it or anything like that, feel free to throw questions in the chat. And then we'll go ahead and also circle back at the end of the presentation to ask questions a little bit more fuller. So first off, partisan, nonpartisan. First of all, I'm a little bit of a word nerd, and so partisan, the root for that is simply part. It just means part or party, right? And so partisan means to be strongly biased or in strong support of a particular political party, cause, or a candidate. Nonpartisan means there's no bias. So there's no part that we weigh into one or the other. And that applies to both parties, so Democratic, Republican, Libertarian, Green, as well as individual candidates, candidate 1, candidate 2, candidate 3. So again, a nonpartisan organization, which would be a 501c3, not biased towards any one side or political party. An organization like 501c4 that is partisan can be biased towards a political party or candidate. And these are not rules that we're like, just because these are actually rules that come straight from the federal government and the IRS. So they set these rules and we simply just follow them, right? But what does that look like, right? What is nonpartisan, partisan? What does it look like, right? That's the definition, but what's it look like on paper? What's it look like in practice? So you'll see on your screen, you've got one side that's nonpartisan, one side that's partisan. So right now we're going to focus on the nonpartisan section. So that's us. That's the 501c3. That's Initiate Justice, the nonpartisan side. So these are some of the political activities that we are allowed to engage in as a 501c3. So it's things like education, providing services, non-lobbying advocacy, lobbying, direct lobbying, but with limitations, and nonpartisan election activity. So again, election activity that doesn't have to do with any particular party or candidate. It's just very general based. So some of those educational things are going to look like informative presentations like redistricting. What is redistricting? How is this going to impact you? Voting rights. What are your rights? This is something where we would highlight and amplify Prop 17. Just giving basic information as to what the voting rights are, which for Prop 17 is folks that are on parole are legally allowed to vote. So that's sort of the information and the education that we're able to sort of provide. Also ballot parties, again, but with limitations. So we can have very general education ballot parties where we talk about the things that will be on the ballot. Can't necessarily say who and what you should vote for, but we can say there's going to be state offices, federal offices, local offices, X, Y, and Z. So we can really just inform folks of what is going to be on the ballot. And then also podcasts, right? And Abolition Corner. So those are just more education spaces that we have the ability to do as a 501c3. Our services look like the Institute of Impacted Leaders, the resources that we provide members, and then also our Mindful Monday spaces. So these are all services. These are all things that Initiate Justice provides to our community and our member base. Non-lobbying advocacy, the examples are going to be getting to know your representatives. So you're not asking for anything when you are meeting a representative or meeting with your state representative or local representative. You're simply getting to know each other. It's a rapport building session. So there's no ask there. It's simply, hey, how are you? My name is, these are my values, and there's an exchange, right? But there's nothing, like I said, you're not asking this person of anything. So it's called non-lobbying advocacy. Other ways to lobby or to advocate in this non-lobbying space is going to be sharing information about the bills. So simply just sharing the information. That can be done via social media, word of mouth, through email. And just saying, hey, this is AB, such and such. Here's the information. It's just that simple. And it's just sharing the information. And also sharing advocacy resources and tools. So information about, voter education events, different resources and things like that. So that's a way that you can also advocate in this non-lobbying space. So that's another thing that as a 501c3, we are able to do. In addition to like lobbying, so this is going to be direct lobbying, but remember I said there are limitations. And so what the lobbying looks like from Initiate Justice perspective is letters of support. So garnering letters of support to send into the overall legislature to say, hey, we think this is a really good bill. I think this is a really good bill. You should vote yes. And then leave it at that, right? And hopefully those letters of support will gain enough traction that folks in the legislature will vote yes on something or vote no on something. So we can do letters of support, and that's sort of the lobbying limitations that we have there. In addition to legislative visits, right? So we can do legislative visits. If you have been through the Institute of Impacted Leaders, that's something that is a part of the graduation requirements is to meet with legislators and talk about bills that Initiate Justice is working on, sponsoring, or supporting, and helping in that way to get those bills passed and eventually, hopefully, to the governor's desk for a signature. But those are some of the examples, 2 examples that Initiate Justice can do as far as direct lobbying when it comes to engaging in the political space. And then again, the last but not least is nonpartisan election activity. So this type of activity looks like get out the vote registration events. So again, we're not saying, hey, come fill out a voter registration form and vote for X, Y, and Z. We're not telling people how to vote or how to register, what party to be in. It's simply come out and get your voice heard in this political process called voting. And so we can definitely encourage people to vote. We just can't encourage them on what to vote for. So again, these are distinctions set from the federal government that we have to follow. And then in addition to that, this also not just us as an organization, but it also extends to you as a membership base and as outside organizers. So we'll get into a little bit more of why this is important for y'all to know. But just know that this also expands to anybody that is going to represent Initiate Justice in that way. And we'll talk a little bit more about why in just a minute. But again, so the differences between a 501c3 and a 501c4, right? So you can see that a 501c3, IJ can do a lot. We have done a lot. We will continue to do a lot. We're doing a lot, right? But on the partisan side, they can do a lot too. There's just some things over there that we can't touch. So 501c4s can do anything that we can do, anything we can do, they can do better. No, probably not, I don't know. But that is what they can do over there. They can do anything that we can do, right? So that includes education, providing the services, the lobbying, all of that stuff. But something that is different is they have unlimited lobbying capacity. So while we are only able to sort of do letters of support, legislative visits, they can take it a next level and really engage directly with candidates, with offices, with different efforts to further a political cause or party or a candidate's officehood, right? And then they can also engage in a lot more election activities, right? And they can be partisan. It doesn't have to be general. They can draw their line in the sand and stand on it. And so some examples that a 501c4 can do is they can endorse candidates. We cannot. They can engage in recall efforts. We cannot. They can do voter guides that compare candidates, right? So if you're over there in the IJ action space, you can kind of see what that looks like over there. But we can't come out with a voter guide that compares candidates and things like that. Our voter guides can just be very, very general that says, this is what's on the ballot, make your voice heard, right? So again, very, very general, but still effective, but just general. And then something else that a 501c4 can contribute to and do that we can't as a 501c3 is contribute contributions or funds to campaigns. As well as canvas for those campaigns as well. So going door to door, trying to increase votes for a particular candidate. So those are some examples of what a 501c4 can do. And again, all we can do is stay in our 501c3 lane and engage in the educational piece of the political process. And so one way that's really kind of helped me to distinguish the two is I think of 501c3 as things. We can advocate for things in the 501c3 space. In a 501c4 space, it's all about people. You can advocate for people over there. People is over there on the C4 side. Things are on the C3 side. So that is just something that's been really helpful for me to understand when to say things and when to not. So we'll get into that in a little bit, but just wanted to provide y'all with this really quick breakdown of what the difference is between Initiate Justice and maybe a 501c4 like Initiate Justice Action. So don't forget, if you have questions, we'll definitely be circling back. So feel free to keep those questions in your head or drop them in the chat.
And real quick, and
yeah.
Adriana's about to jump into it right now. I just wanted to share, like I mentioned earlier, like we are providing these tools and this information, but at the end of the day, you are all advocates for yourself, for your communities, and in your own right. So when we're saying these are things like that we don't do, we're saying initiate justice as an organization. So like when you're wearing an IJ t-shirt, when you're, in an IJ space, when you're doing something coordinated by initiate justice, that's what we're referring to. When you are doing your own thing on your own time, you can advocate for whomever, indoor, share, all of that, like you can do. But when you're representing Initiate Justice as a 501c3, or when you're in Initiate Justice 501c3 spaces, or Initiate Justice spaces, these are the limitations. And so just want to make that clear. We are not telling you what you can and can't do, because as advocates, you are entitled to use your voice in whichever way you see fit and whatever you need to do to advance your values, support your community, and continue to build the power of your family and your communities. We're speaking in particular specifically to what Initiate Justice coordinates efforts that we lead and initiate in spaces that we create and invite you in. And when you're representing as an Initiate Justice organizer or member, or wearing, Initiate Justice shirts, etc. And I think that's exactly what Adriana is going to speak to and talk a little bit more about right now also.
Yeah, thanks, Antoinette, for raising that, and definitely do want to highlight that, and definitely have some resources for how you can continue to be effective advocates, both for IJ and both individually. But yes, individually, you are not 501c3s individually. So you are private citizens, and in your private citizenry, you can advocate for whomever and whatever. But yes, this is specifically for when you are wearing that IJ t-shirt, or where you are representing yourself as either a member or an outside organizer. Again, so the nonpartisan advocacy do's and don'ts while representing IJ or any other 501c3, right? And so these are simply just rules of the game. And I have a very handy resource for y'all later on that's also called the rules of the game, to understand sort of when to show up as Initiate Justice and when to show up as yourself. So when we talk about advocating and organizing for Initiate Justice, and y'all do such an amazing job of that, we just want to make sure that y'all are doing things absolutely correctly so that we're all aligned, and that we are all able to continue to move Initiate Justice forward into the powerhouse that it is destined to become. A few of the do's, right? When we talk about do's, these are things that we definitely want to encourage members to do, which is things like share your voting experience with us, especially with the elections coming up. We want to know what that experience is like for y'all. If it is your first time voting, or if you are helping somebody sign up to vote and it is their first time voting, or whatever the experience is, right? It's a special experience, it's yours, and we want to hear about it. We want to uplift that, we want to celebrate that with you. So definitely share that with us. But we do want to be mindful that as you're sharing your experience with us, be mindful of what you're sharing. So if you want to tag us, please tag us in your Instagram posts and your social media, but just being mindful of certain things. And again, this is all due to the rules that we have to follow as an organization. That's where the lines tend to get a little blurred. And just a little bit more context for folks is because we've gotten some questions about like, when can I say this and when can I not? So hopefully this answers a little bit more questions and makes things a little bit more clear. Other things that we want folks to do is help others register to vote. And again, not, kind of influencing how they vote, but just getting them signed up and registered. We really want folks to continue to do that and to spread the word. I think it was Crash who put something in the chat earlier about telling somebody about Prop 17 that no, you very well can vote. And so that is something that we want to continue to see folks do, because we love hearing about it and we love to see it. So again, continuing to share that general voter education information, as Crash did with the person he was speaking to. And then also encourage others to use their voice to vote and vote responsibly, right? Just because you can't tell somebody who to vote for, you definitely can encourage them to do their research and vote responsibly, and vote for what they think is best for themselves and their communities overall, right? And I think that's how we get to a point where folks are really passionate about voting because it's something that they care about. So making it personal for folks is something that we want to continue to see happen. And this is definitely not an exhaustive list. There is plenty other things that we can do as advocates when we are representing Initiate Justice. But these are just a few examples that we wanted to provide for folks to give a little bit of understanding of what does the do's and don'ts look like. As far as the don'ts, when you are tagging something on social media, whether that be Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, we really just want to make sure that we're not being tagged in anything partisan. And again, there is a reason for that, and we will definitely get into that in the next slide. But we cannot be tagged in anything partisan. So that means candidates, parties, etc., anything like that that heavily supports one side over the other. Unfortunately, as much as we would like to, we unfortunately just legally cannot. So sometimes you might post something and share something and tag IJ, and you may notice that it doesn't get reshared or something like that. But that's a little bit of the reasons why. It's just because we have to really just maintain these rules when it comes to this thing. And again, these are federal rules that come to us. So that might explain why you don't see every post being reshared by our followers and things like that. So just a little context there. And also already kind of touched on this, but not influencing others to vote in a particular way when you are representing IJ. Again, when you are in your own personal, private citizen space, you can influence whomever you would like. But if you are going to represent yourself as an outside organizer or a member of Initiate Justice, you cannot influence others in a way that they should vote. It's very just general, give them the information, and hopefully they make the best decision for themselves. And then also, this is a big one. And again, this is just recently because IJ action is so new and there has been some confusion, but we really want to keep Initiate Justice and Initiate Justice Action separate. Even when we're in Initiate Justice spaces, and sometimes it can get hard because some of us are in multiple spaces, right? We're in both spaces, but really just making sure that we are very intentional. And I'm saying we, because I have to do this as well. Is just being intentional of what hat I am wearing and what space I am in. Because one of the things that you will learn from some of the resources that I'm going to share with you later is that it's all about timing, context, and what hat you happen to be wearing at the time. So for example, if I am wearing my Initiate Justice staff member hat, I'm not going to be engaging in candidate type politics, right? But if I am wearing my Adriana private citizen hat, then I can engage in candidate stuff. But I cannot blend these two together. And I'll share a little bit about why right now as we move forward. But yeah, just something to really keep in mind while I find my mouse. There it is. So why is all of this important? Why is it important that we know the differences between a 501c4, a 501c3? Why are there things that we can do? Why are there things that we shouldn't do? Why does it matter? Simple. We have to be in compliance with IRS standards as an organization. And so I think there are certain things that we have to report and things like that to the almighty IRS. And so that keeps our 501c3 status. And for whatever reason, if we unfortunately lost that, we wouldn't be able to do the amazing work that we have been able to do over these last 6 years. And so that's why we want to arm and equip you with this same knowledge and information. It's not just for us, it's for y'all as well. So that we can continue to do this work and we can continue to build and take IJ to the next level and keep leveling up. So that is one reason, 2 reasons why this information is important for you this evening. A third reason is it keeps us accountable to what we're responsible for, right? And so accountability is huge, and especially for those of us in Initiate Justice, as we talk about, you know, a world of abolition. Part of that is, you know, accountability and what that looks like. And so it keeps us accountable. We have a responsibility to follow the rules that have been set forth before us. And so until those rules change, we have to follow them. And that keeps us responsible. And it also maintains our integrity and the respect that we have in the community. So that's another huge reason of why this information is important. And also, number 4 is knowledge builds confidence. When you know how you can move and what you can do in a space and when to do this and when not to do this, you move with increased confidence. It boosts your confidence. I know it did that for me. For those that don't know, I'm also formerly incarcerated. And when you are incarcerated in prison, they give you this book called the Title 15. And when I read that, I was empowered because I knew what I could do, what they couldn't do. And I was able to move about in that space with a little bit more confidence had I not known what the rules were. So in that same vein, we just want to make sure you also know what the rules are as you are going out there advocating for yourselves and also being a representative of Initiate Justice so that we can continue to move and move with confidence. So that is for that. And then this next slide is super important. It's some resources. Really want folks to kind of take a screenshot, take a picture, whatever you have to do to capture this information. Really great resources for continuing to learn 501c3, 501c4 differences, and advocacy and organizing for 501c3 organizations specifically. So there's a really great group of folks called Boulder Advocacy. Their website is boulderadvocacy.org. They have a lot of really great materials, resources, PDF files that you can download and read to learn more about this information. If you're not much of a reader, maybe you're more of a listener. They also have a podcast that's called The Rules of the Game. And it's a really great podcast and it's not long. I think the episodes are maybe like 20 to 30 minutes. And they just kind of cover certain rules of the game that we have to follow as 501c3 organizations. And so one in particular episode that I think would be really helpful for y'all, for all of us, is this one episode, and it's called Individual versus Organizational Activity. And I'm telling you, y'all, I watched this episode and it really helped me to understand when to show up as Adriana and when to show up as Initiate Justice. And so really, really helpful as far as understanding the rules of the game. So super great resource. And they also have their resource material that can be filtered by state. And so they are a national organization. So as you are looking through their resources, just make sure you use the filter option to filter all of the resources for California. So you aren't getting confused by information that is for like Montana or something. Want to keep it California, but definitely learn more about other states. So you can never have too much information. Another really great resource is the California Community Foundation. They have a YouTube page that has a lot of videos, past webinars as well, on voter education, civic engagement, and advocacy and lobbying. So again, you can continue to build up your advocacy and lobbying skills as organizers, as members, as both individuals, and as members of Initiate Justice. So definitely please snap that, screenshot it, save those resources. We will continue to send out additional resources as we get them to continue to build this. But yeah, we just wanted to really bring this to y'all. I know I talked a lot, a lot of information, C3s, C4s, 501s, it's a lot of numbers. So I definitely just want to give some space as well if anyone has any questions or thoughts or anything like that. But while questions are kind of brewing, Antoinette, I'll pass it over to you if you would like to add anything.
Thank you, Adriana. I do want to uplift a lot of sentiments in the chat. Gratitude for this presentation, Adriana. The information appears to be helpful for a lot of people here today. And then also everyone keep in mind that this meeting is recorded. It will be on our YouTube. It is now another lasting resource for you, for your friends, family, your community, and for those who maybe weren't able to make it here today. But I really just want to emphasize, the name of the podcast is Perfect Rules of the Game, right? They keep us locked out of a lot of different spaces because they assume we don't know the rules. And so when we share these tools, when we share these resources, when we educate one another so we know the rules of the game, then we can play it. And ultimately, we can play it better than they can, and we can beat them at their own game. And that is the ultimate goal. And so this is one of the reasons we wanted to make sure that we were bringing you the information as soon as possible and giving you some resources so that you know you can still show up for Initiate Justice. You can still show up for your own advocacy. You can show up for your loved ones, your friends and family. And as long as you know how you're showing up. I had friends reach out to me recently like, hey, my ballot came, girl, I don't know what to do. I got you, right? But that's personal. That's in my personal life. I can provide as much resource. I can send news articles. I can send resources. I can do Google searches for them. And that's what I want to encourage each and every one of you to do, right? Like, just because we are not providing you the research, the resources on how to vote, you know you have the power to vote. You know how to make sure you get your ballot, and you know how to make sure you return your ballot. And we're going to talk a little bit about and give you some more resources on how to do that. But we don't want to discourage you from doing your own research, your own advocacy, and showing up for your community and your values the way that you desire. We just want to make sure that when you're in Initiate Justice spaces, representing Initiate Justice, you can also help hold us accountable, right? And if you catch someone in our space, and it's not the space, then you can also hold, we can hold one another accountable. And that's how we continue to grow. That's how we continue to keep one another empowered. And like Adriana said, it really does build your confidence when you have the knowledge and you know how you're showing up. So always show up for yourself, but we still want you all to be able to show up for Initiate Justice as well. I did see one question come through the chat that I responded to. And I just want to encourage Celeste and everyone else who is, working on your voting plan. Google is a heck of a resource. Google is a very valid resource. And so wanting to encourage you to, like Celeste is trying to do your research as you are making your voting plan. That's what I'm going to say. Do your research as you're making your voting plan. And that's my response to Celeste. And I provided a couple of nonpartisan websites that you can start with, Celeste, in doing your research as you make your voting plan. But Adriana, that was absolutely wonderful, an abundance of information that I'm extremely grateful to have had you here to share today. Are there any questions or comments from organizers, members, anyone here, anything that folks would like to either add or ask? Okay, seeing none, hearing none. I think we can go ahead and move on to I see a hand. Go ahead, Crispy.
Yeah, I had the same question as Celeste. And so what I found out about the judges, because that's always the hardest thing for me, because there's no you can't find endorsements or anything like that for them. One thing to note is when you're, at least the judges for me in my community, the judges on my ballot were for the state Supreme Court and the state appellate courts. So it's important to know which courts you're talking about for the judges. The other thing you might want to look at is who appointed those judges? How did they get in there? And if you align with the values of the person who appointed them, that might help you make a good decision about it. But there's no ballotpedia for judges, right? So that's what kind of makes it different. So that's, another approach you might want to take. And I'll put a link in the chat if I can find it, of the link that I went to see the history, like there was like a bio on the judges to find out who voted them in and where, when and where.
The more you know. Thank you very much, Crispy. I really appreciate that. And I see Celeste also acknowledging that in the chat. So just reiterating what Crispy just shared as she searches for that link and resource that she found, which is what might be helpful is identifying and researching who appointed the judges that may be on your ballot, and assessing their values against your values and beliefs. And so that was a very critical piece of information right there, Crispy. So I really do appreciate you for sharing that.
Sorry, one more piece of information. So we're voting yes or no. If you vote yes, that means that you want to keep them on. If you vote no, then that's saying I want the governor or whoever, the governor to appoint new people. So you're not voting, they're not running against each other, but it's yes means keep them, they're doing fine, and no means I want somebody else to appoint the next person. So if a Republican wins the governor's seat, they're going to be putting in a new judge.
Thank you, Crispy. And I also want to encourage people to take your time, start now if you haven't already started, because your ballot can be confusing. Because like Crispy just said, for that particular elected seat, it's yes or no, right? But that's something that if any of you all were with us back in 2020 when I was first hired, Daisy and I held a ballot party. And that's literally what we did. We just went through all the propositions, all the elected seats that you could see on your ballot. And we talked about what it means to vote yes or no, or what it means to vote for this particular office. And so those things are important sometimes. If you don't really understand what you're voting for, take your time and do a little bit of research, or like Celeste just did, ask a trusted source. Ask one another, lean on each other, lean on others in your community. Someone has information that you might not have that can help you make your voting plan, like Crispy just provided to all of us right now. So I just want to encourage you all to continue asking those questions and continue sharing that information, Crispy and everyone else. And Crispy did just drop a link in the chat. Are there any other questions or thoughts? No? Okay, I don't see any, but if any hands come up, then we'll make sure we give you space. But I will go ahead and pass it back to Adriana.
Thanks, Antoinette. So if there are no questions, we'll keep moving things forward. So we really wanted to just spend, to wrap up that sort of election prep, when to be IJ, when to be yourself conversation, with some follow-up resources for actual election day coming up. So this will also serve as sort of the call to action. So I'm actually going to share my screen as well, just so y'all know what I'm looking at. These are our call to action items for the month of November. Get out and vote. Election day is next week on the 8th. It's on a Tuesday. Polls open at 7 a.m. They close at 8 p.m. Vote early if you are able to. There's a lot of different resources that I'm going to go through. So feel free, please, to, again, screenshot, take a picture of this slide, And we'll also try to drop some of those, the links in the chat as well. But just for voter resources. So again, if this is your first election, your first time voting or anything like that, we really just want to make sure that y'all are equipped to go out there and make your voices heard in this next week or so. So first, just to state that all California active registered voters should have received a vote by mail ballot. Antoinette is modeling one in her square, if you are able to see that. But everyone should have gotten one for the November 8th general election. A good way to keep track of your ballot, to know when it's being sent, when it's been received, when it's been counted, all of that stuff, is to use a really interesting website and a function called Ballot Tracks. You're able to put in your information and it literally tracks your ballot. So I love to use this because I literally get notifications on my phone, says your ballot's on the way, we've got your ballot, it's been counted, all the steps, all the T's. So they give it up. So I really love using it. So that way, if you know, like if you get the alert that says your ballot has been mailed, but you haven't received it, you can follow up, contact the registrar's office and get a replacement ballot as soon as possible, things of that nature. So definitely get your ballots turned in, filled out, all that good stuff. Also, all counties have early voting and drop-off locations. So you can go into your county's registrar of voters office and drop off your ballot there directly, or there's usually drop-off locations throughout the counties, and all that information, it will usually be in your ballot for your specific county. You can also go to your county's registrar of voters website and also find that information as well. For all of the drop-off locations. And it's really simple. You literally, it looks like those old school blue mailboxes, if you're that old. And you can literally just go open the thing, drop your ballot in, and keep it pushing. Really convenient way to turn in your ballot if for some reason you're unable to go out on the actual election day. Something else that's new this year, as of October 29th, Voters' Choice Act counties were able to open vote centers throughout their counties. So this actually came from a Senate Bill 450. It was something that was passed way back in 2016, but it just went into effect. Essentially what happens is counties were able to sort of opt into this program where they can create longer term or earlier voting opportunities for folks in the community. And so not all counties have a plan for one, but I do know, I think LA County has some available, Alameda County, I think Riverside as well. So there is a website you can go to, and it'll tell you if your county has a specific plan and all of that good stuff. But it's really great because it extends the time that you are able to kind of go and vote in person. So I think in some counties, it extends it up from 10 days from the election. Others it's 3, some others it's 7. So 7 days before the election, including on election day, folks are able to go into these vote centers and vote in person in addition to like a polling place. So it's super handy. And again, not every county has one. So definitely just check the website and see if your county is there. And then it should tell you kind of like an area where all of those vote centers are opened up at. Also, in-person voting locations offer same-day voter registration. So the last day to register to vote was, I believe, on October 24th. And so if you did miss the deadline to vote, you can still register to vote and do same-day registration. The only caveat with this is your ballot will not be counted until they can confirm your registration is valid for voter registration. So once that happens, then your ballot will be counted. So you can still go fill out a provisional ballot, but it just won't be counted until like after everybody else's. So that's the only caveat to same day voter registration, but it still allows you to have your voice heard in the process. Replacement ballots are also available at these spaces, accessible voting machines, and language assistance to those who need it. So this is something that's super important. We know that not everybody speaks English. Not everybody is even able to speak, right? So we have some folks that use sign language and different types of communication. And so these voting centers and in-person polling locations are usually equipped to kind of provide that language assistance to folks. And then also you can definitely check your voter registration status online at voterstatus.ca.gov. So you can check to see, like, are you registered at your current address, your current location? So if you've moved or anything like that, definitely want to make sure you check your voter registration status so you know that your ballot and your voice will definitely be counted this November 8th. And so as far as information, what will be on your ballot, you will find federal, statewide, and judicial candidates, 7 state ballot propositions, and local candidates, as well as some measures as well. Not every county will have a ballot measure particularly, so just make sure you're paying attention to that. So your county might not be pushing any particular measures for your county, but those are usually what will be on the folks' ballots throughout California. So for returning your ballot, you want to make sure you return your vote by mail ballot by mail or in person to a secure ballot drop box, a voting location, or your county elections office by November 8th. And then all vote by mail ballots must be returned by mail and postmarked on or before 8 p.m. on November 8th and received by November 15th, 2022. So if you're going to mail it, old school snail mail, just make sure you get it in preferably before November 8th. That way you know for sure it's going to make it to where it's supposed to make it to by that November 15th cutoff date. But so again, just wanted to provide you with some additional resources as we get ready to go out and vote next week. So happy to answer any questions about these specific things. And again, the Voter Choice Act counties, something I literally just stumbled onto like 2 days ago. So it is super new. Again, as of October 29th, these spaces will have opened. And so just a few days ago. So if you know of that in your county or you see it, stop in, see what it's like, see what they're talking about. I'd love to know more because my county has chosen not to opt into that particular investment. So I have to live vicariously through all of y'all. So please let me know your experiences if you use like a voter center through the Voters Choice Act. So that I think wraps up for Election Day resources. Antoinette, did you want to add anything?
I just want to say thank you, Adriana. Like, can we give a virtual round of applause for all of the information that Adriana just shared to make sure that we are equipped to vote and continue advocating for what we want to see happen in our community. So thank you, Adriana. I also want to acknowledge and see if folks would feel interested in dropping in the chat. How many of you have already completed your ballot? I see some people here who I know have already submitted their ballots, but I see, okay, I knew it. Let us know if you've already, I see some thumbs up. I see some people working on it. Hey, MJ. Okay. So I'm really excited to know that we are using our voice. Done, done, and done. Thank you. Oh no, Alessia. Alessia just got here into the stage. So I'm really sorry, Alessia. Would love to know, like, if you feel like reaching out to me offline, anything, any support or resources that you need or anything, or I don't know if you're like residentially here for sure, for good, or yeah, reach out if you need any resources or anything. But thank you for still being here. Thank you for still soaking up the information. And remind folks that even if they are on parole, they can vote. So, and Alessia, we already know that you share the information, you repost, you reshare, you share it widely within your community and with your loved ones. So continue to support us that way. Okay. Okay, got you. Thanks, Alessia. But again, continue to support us in the way that you have been doing, by sharing the information with others. And everyone else here as well, wanted to encourage you to continue sharing the information you learned today with others. There were several links that I dropped into the chat: ballot track, so you could track your ballot, get notifications, the Secretary of State website for tons of voting information, but also so you can find out if your county has those expanded early voting opportunities due to the Voters' Choice Act. Also the Secretary of State website, so that if you need to engage in same-day voter registration, you can get some information there. And then also someone mentioned earlier, and I want to highly encourage, there are a lot of websites online that kind of break down what it means to vote in some of these elections. And so I shared some like calmatters.org and ballotpedia.org, but there are so many other, vote411.org. So I shared those into the chat, but again, encouraging everyone to do your research and find out about those organizations and those platforms that kind of give you some guidance as you're preparing your voting plan. We are not done, so do not go just yet. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap us up with some closing remarks. As you all know, thank you again, Adriana. Are there any questions before we wrap up? No questions? Okay, if there aren't any questions, I'm going to ask for a virtual drum roll as we.
How do you find your ballot? Track your ballot? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, no problem at all, Tammy. So you can track your ballot at Ballot Tracks. And I dropped the link into the chat. I can drop it in again, but it's California.ballot tracks, and tracks is spelled TRAX.net. And someone already, thank you, Adriana. Adriana already dropped it into the chat once more. Can you reach the chat, Tammy? Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so I'm gonna ask for a virtual drum roll. We have come to the point of our November member meeting where we acknowledge a member of the month. And so our November member of the month is someone who also graduated from our Institute of Impacted Leaders, but our Long Beach Institute of Impacted Leaders, someone who immediately upon graduating participated in our 2021 legislative visits, recently participated in our spring meet and greets with their reps, and in those spring meet and greets was actually recognized by face, by name, by their representative due to their consistent advocacy and relationship building with their representative's office. This person, although may not be here tonight and may not always be in our member meeting spaces or our committee spaces, this person is still an avid supporter and supports and contributes in a myriad of different ways, supporting our committee, supporting advocacy, and also empowering others in the Initiate Justice space and in their overall community to be advocates for change. And so I do want to acknowledge Monea Hill, who is again a graduate of our Long Beach Institute of Impacted Leaders. So I don't think I've seen Monea here in the space tonight, but if you are watching this after, we want to make sure that you know that you are valued, that you know that you are seen. We see you, we appreciate you, and we value you a ton, Monea. And again, tons of love happening for you in the chat. So I just want to recognize you if you are watching this afterwards. Congratulations and thank you for your contributions. We're super elated to have you as a member, as an organizer, and as a part of our Initiate Justice family. Again, I say this all the time, we could not do this work without each and every single one of you. Those of you who are here right now in this room, those who are not, but might be watching this afterwards, those who are inside and who can't make it to these meetings, but still do the work and still advocate from inside and beyond those walls. And also for everyone else in our community who supports us in ways that we may see, ways that we may not know, sharing the information, uplifting our work, advocating for legislation, both for initiate justice bills and abolitionist bills throughout the space. We're super grateful for all of you. This is our second to last member meeting. Make sure that you join us next month on December 7th for our last member meeting of 2022. You can register for our member meeting at tinyurl.com/IJ monthly. Don't forget that if you want to hear how our civic engagement workshop went today, at Pleasant Valley State Prison, join our Inside Organizing Committee tomorrow evening at 5:30, so that you can be in space and hear a recap of that civic engagement workshop. And that is really one of those opportunities that we at Initiate Justice value tremendously, where we get to spend time with our inside community, educating, empowering, and having very fruitful discussions around the change we want to see and how we can be a part of that change by passing statewide legislation. Thank you everyone for being here this evening. I don't know, Adriana, if you have any final words, but welcome to the team. Adriana, we're excited to have you as our statewide advocacy manager. All of the information and resources you provided tonight is very evident of why you are such a valued addition to our Initiate Justice team.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. No, nothing else to add. Just really want to, again, encourage y'all to continue to be powerhouse advocates, continue to grow, continue to learn, continue to stretch yourselves, challenge yourselves, and yeah, vote. Make your voices heard. They matter, they count. Even if for whatever reason you are unable to vote, your voice still matters. And so definitely you can be of influence to others in the space and beyond in your own personal lives. So thank y'all for just being so gracious this evening. And that's really all I have to add. I don't have anything else to say.
Thank you. Good night. Don't forget to be patient with our IJ team as we have some days off and some convenings happening. That's going to keep us away from emails a little bit. Good night, everyone. And it's always a pleasure to be in space with each and every one of you. This concludes our November member meeting. Bye and good night.